Faith can feel like hearts and butterflies until someone lights a match and burns it all to the ground. Welcome to the Burning Butterflies podcast.
The sad thing is that there's abuse of every kind within the church. But the spiritual abuse is the stuff that just
What's a place there shouldn't be abuse? Like, there just shouldn't be abuse in a place that claims Jesus.
Well, it ruins your soul. If you're new here, we suggest listening to our prologue episode first. This is the story of two women's journey through spiritual abuse and escaping from toxic church culture while finding hope in Christ.
Sometimes it's just the facts, and if you get offended by it, that's a you issue. And if we can't be mature enough to have these conversations, even if some of the topics are difficult, then shame on us.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so we are picking back up in our timeline with Amanda's story, and we left off last time with you had stepped up, you started serving in the youth. You're a little bit older than youth age, so of course you're the perfect candidate to jump in and take on youth group and go.
Well, buckle up because we're going to drink some Kool-Aid today, because this whole time of my life at Come As You Are, like, I often referred back to this time as like these were the good days. These were the good days. But I was guzzling that Kool-Aid by the gallon. And so I was convincing myself that these were the good days. So, yep, I'm in youth, and it's me and another guy. We were only helpers. And then when like the youth leader that I came under, like when he dipped after him and Tom got in an argument, it left me and this other guy, right? And so we are doing youth together, and we're kind of like bouncing off of each other really well. And it was actually him who gave me my first opportunity to teach a lesson. I questioned, like, well, is that okay? Is that allowed? And he was like, well, I don't know why it wouldn't be. And he like really kind of was like the first one to encourage me in that, and kind of call out that gifting of teaching that I had. So that was really awesome. And I still like, even though I haven't like seen him in years, like anytime we run into each other, like him and I still have a very like, hi, how are you? Like, just because that was such a great time in ministry together during then. I also started taking more and more Bible studies. And one of those Bible studies that I took at this time was called First Place. And pretty much this whole Bible study is about putting God first in your life, especially in the area of food. And so I really started feeling like there was something wrong with my faith because I was overweight. And there's something really wrong with me, and there's something wrong with my prayer life. And so this whole Bible study, this wasn't something that was offered by Come As You Are. This is something like some lady found it, and she went around and asked pretty much like all the fat girls in church, like, hey, I'm doing a Bible study. And like there was like eating plans in it and all of this, but the whole thing was very much like, if you are overweight and you're struggling with your weight, it's because you're not putting God first in your life.
I feel like this was a study that was going around in Christian circles, because at the same time you were taking that one, like I was at another church, but all the women were doing a health, nutrition,
like this is
Bible study. Like at the time, like I'm thinking this is
like the time where like the Daniel diet or whatever, that whole thing was like.
I'm trying to think what the one was called that I was taking, but it was like all the church I went to was so small at the time. So I mean, like you're talking about like 12 women. That was all the women of the church anyway, but like every woman was there. But I'm thinking it was like one of those. I noticed that happens a lot. Like in church circles. No matter what church you go to, you end up
Yeah.
in a lot of the same Bible
Whatever
studies
is
or genres of
yeah,
Bible studies.
we're called to be above the world, but there's definitely like pop culture and fads going on in the church.
Yeah, and it definitely was presented even in the one I was in. So I wasn't in the same one as you, but like there definitely was. It was definitely like a faith and food issue. Like,
yes,
how do you grow your faith and then eat the way God wants you to and be the temple that God wants you to be and be fit and healthy?
yes.
And it was all wrapped up into a faith capsule.
Yes, and there's nothing wrong like with eating right and being active and being healthy. Like those are all amazing, wonderful things. But when it's tied to your faith and you're made to feel like there's something wrong with you if you're fat, like, I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
let's just call it what it is.
No, right.
I'm a bigger girl, and I will never be 150 pounds,
Right.
like ever. Like that's just not gonna happen for me. But there's a way to be healthy without it
regardless of the
being
size,
used against you spiritually.
Right. And it's almost like I think about like in scripture when they're like, who sinned? Like this man or his family, you know? And Jesus is like, this isn't a sin issue.
Yeah.
And so like we tie things to our faith that aren't necessarily like I need more faith so I can be thin. That doesn't equate.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm bigger than I was then. And I feel more healthy now. Like I feel like I eat better now and I'm more active now. And I like my body doesn't hurt. Like, I mean, there was a lot of things going on with me physically that now I see was a lot of stress and a lot of, trauma and things like that in my body. But like, I feel better and I feel more healthy now, even though I'm heavier than I was then.
Right. Well, I think that you definitely just clarified, like with the like between trauma being stored in the body and stress and all of that. Sometimes those things that's more of a lot of the times we have to look at the whole picture.
Yeah.
We can't just pick symptoms and then randomly say like, well, it's like giving everybody the same medicine for whatever they have. Doesn't matter what your ailment. Yeah. Just take this medicine, you'll be fine. You have to have different prescriptions for different problems.
And if you're already stressed out, telling someone there's something wrong with their faith is not going to help.
Doesn't help
with that whatsoever.
Yeah. So it was somebody outside of the church, or it was somebody who went to the church who found the Bible study that was taking place outside of the church?
No. She found, because we did it at her house. So it was someone in the church.
Yeah. Do you think that's because the church wouldn't? We talked about in the last episode how in order to do
Bible study I don't think Tom and Charlotte signed off on this.
Okay, I was wondering if this was if you
because
this was going on at that time.
No, because I think she probably took it to them and they probably said no.
Right, and then you have an option to invite people separately.
Yeah, and so it was at her house, and it wasn't promoted like at church in the bulletin or on the slides or anything like that.
And then she had asked you personally?
Yes. And so I actually stopped going to that class when I found out I was pregnant with my second, when I got pregnant with Clayton. Just because I was so sick, like it took everything in me to even be able to do youth group. Like that summer I was pregnant with him, it was awful. And I'm so thankful we had a young college kid. He came and did an internship. And so he kind of took on a brunt of a lot of the stuff that I was doing that summer, like for the sake of his internship. And I was so thankful for him because I don't know what I would have done that summer because I was so sick. And like the funniest thing was when I actually had Clayton, I went into labor on a Wednesday morning. I started having contractions, and that night was youth group, and it was like the end of the summer celebration, right? And we were going to have this big old barbecue and play games in the park and stuff. And I called this kid who, like, just a side note, like I've known him as long as I've known my husband. Like he is my brother-in-law's best friend from elementary school. Yeah. So like he is like an unofficial part of our family, right? And so I call him and I'm like, hey, no rush, but I'm kind of having some contractions. And if you could come and just pick up the stuff for youth, like for tonight, I don't think I'm going to make it to the barbecue. So if you could just come, like, I had all the food and everything, all the stuff for the games, everything was at my house. And he is there in like 4 minutes. Like, I'm not joking you. He got to my house so fast and he is like panicked. And he is like, why is Justin not home? Do I need to call someone? Do I need to,
He's ready
like,
to boil water.
yeah, that's why he's like, do I have to boil water? Do I need to get towels? What do I need to do? Like, he's panicking. And I'm like, we have time. We have time. So we had plenty of time. Clay, I went into labor on a Wednesday and he didn't make his appearance until Friday afternoon. So Clay took his sweet time.
Yeah. I was just letting you know I'm not making it to you tonight.
Yes. Everyone has watched me throw up for the past however many months. We've been doing this. They don't need to watch me have contractions also. After I have Clay, I'm still serving in youth. And I really this is kind of really embarrassing to admit, but I really, really wanted so badly to be the church secretary. Like, that was my dream job. Like, I don't know,
was Saturday night out yet with like the church ladies?
I don't know. I don't know, but like, I just
wanted to be a church lady.
I wanted so bad to be that church secretary. And it was a very old lady who was the church secretary. And I just kept telling myself, like, she's got to retire soon. Like, or die. Like, I mean, like,
something's happening.
She's old. And like, secretary. I want so badly to be the church secretary. And so I start doing things like I offer to make all of the youth flyers. Well, so then people start realizing, like, me, someone who went to college and learned how to do some of these things versus this old woman using Microsoft Word clip art, like,
there's a difference.
The promotional material that was being put out are two very different qualities.
I was going to say that anyway. I'm like, it makes sense that you would want to do that because you went to school to do a lot of this stuff.
Yes.
So it's like, and then the things that, it's funny because the job that you went to school to do is not church secretary, but at the church, that's what the secretary did.
Yes.
So then it totally I was like, oh, that totally makes sense. Go ahead.
Yes. And so I start volunteering to do that. And then other people start asking me to do that. So I'm making time out of my day where I'm spending time at home. I'm still doing daycare out of my home and all of that, but I'm spending time every day doing church stuff at home voluntarily. I start serving at women's retreats. I help, like, because again, I have the spiritual gift of organization, you know?
So she's an organizer.
So I start organizing, like, everyone has to order the shirts and then we start getting bags and we have all of this stuff. So I start organizing all of that or helping organize like all of the spreadsheets and stuff to be able, like, when women sign up and all of those kinds of things. So I start doing that. Then we have a couple of other people join as like youth leaders. Like, we kind of had people like come and go here and there. But we had a couple of ladies and one of them wrote a purity study. And this is like, I mean, this is the height, purity culture, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And it was only for the girls. The boys didn't have a purity study.
Of course not.
But it was only for the girls, and it was all based around devoting yourself to God and to purity and all of the stupid crap that you say in purity culture. Like, you know, anytime you do something with a boy or hold his hand or kiss him, you know, you're ruining a petal of your flower and all that garbage, right? And so this purity study gets written. I'm eating this up, right? Like, I am drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm all for it. Yes, because like I was not that girl growing up and I so wish I could have done things differently. And I have a chance to use my pain to help the next generation and all the crap I told myself. And so I was going to be a part of this purity study. We go and it's me and two other ladies. So one woman actually wrote this study. And I mean, she poured her heart and soul into this. And I do not fault her at all because like it was a very great, well-written study. It was just purity culture is like, we know right? Now, you know. It's ick, yeah. Right? But back then, like, again, we're all drinking the Kool-Aid. We didn't know any different. And it was actually like, I mean, she's very talented as a writer. She wrote this study and had like homework and verses and like all this stuff to go with it, right? So we show up and one of the other lady who was a part of this, she worked in a school in some capacity. I don't know if she was like a counselor or what she did, but she worked at a school in some capacity, and she just felt super passionate that we needed to teach them the like the high school health class
Yeah.
lessons.
So we're going to teach purity out of fear.
And we're sitting, because before we start, we have a parent meeting. So you have parents, moms and dads, and their youth age daughters. So, I mean, as young as 6th grade, all the way up to senior in high school, we're all sitting in a meeting together at the church office. And this woman is showing slides of STDs.
Oh my God.
Like, why is purity important? Because you don't want to get chlamydia. Like, this is what it looks like.
Even
like,
worse than going to hell, you'll get the clap.
Yes. Yes. And so it was so awkward. And Tom, once Tom and Charlotte found out about that, like, they were pissed. And it's very important to note at this time that the women that I was doing like that Mons group, we called it Morning Munchies, and we would meet at houses. That group of women, one of them got involved in an MLM that sold, I don't know if you're familiar with the term passion parties.
Oh my God. Okay.
And so, but it was all very like
we've got
okay.
We've got sex toys in one end of the building, STDs in the other.
So I need everyone to like. I want to paint a picture. Charlotte is very straight-laced. Like, we do not talk about these things. We do like very boomer mentality. Like, we don't talk about private things and all of that. So we have this woman who's showing pictures of STDs to families in the church office. And then I'm not joking you, like literally just a couple weeks later, people are getting invited. Like, this woman has these passion party invitations. And I mean, it's no different. Women did it all the time. I'm having a pampered chef party. So I have my little invitations. And I'm going to stand in the lobby at church and hand them out.
We're doing scrapbooks. We're doing cooking tools.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
And so this woman
just happened to have the passion party.
Was handing out her little invitation, and like, oh my gosh, Charlotte, she almost died. Like, she almost died. Yeah, about had a heart attack right then and there in the middle of so all of this was just too much for Charlotte. Yeah. So we were allowed to move forward with the purity study. The woman who showed the pictures was not allowed. It was a whole big thing. She ended up leaving the church over it. I don't know what happened. All I know is that her and Tom and Charlotte had a very intense conversation and she dipped. Yep. Me and the woman who wrote the purity study were allowed to move forward, but we were not allowed. we were allowed to do the purity study, but we were not allowed to talk about sex.
Okay. Done. This is how we get to cover your shoulders.
Yes.
Oh no, that shoulder's going to turn somebody else.
So I am doing daycare. I'm doing my best to be the perfect, wonderful Christian wife. I'm trying so hard, and I am struggling with now. Back then I didn't know what was wrong with me. Now I see I was depressed and I was struggling with my mental health. And when you're depressed, you don't feel like doing things. And so I would put off paying our bills. And I would put it off until it became like an emergency situation. And so now I see that for what it is. But back then I just like, there was more shame. Like, I didn't pay this bill, whatever. And now there's more shame piled on. So then I'm even more of in a depressed state. And it was just like this vicious cycle. Right. And again, I'm equating everything to my faith. Like, I'm not trusting God, and I'm being told, I'm hearing these sermons and all of this stuff about like, tithing and trusting God. So I mean, like, we're tithing and we're not paying our bills, and I've kind of dug us into a little bit of a hole. And, so like we are just starting to come out of all of that. And there was some legislation passed and everything. And pretty much a very, very long story short, we ended up like our mortgage company did some shady stuff. We got a little behind when I had Clayton, we got behind in paying our mortgage that month because I was birthing a child. And so we were behind in paying our mortgage, and our mortgage company, because of like certain legislation, there was like loopholes that like if you foreclosed on someone, you got like extra money, subsidy, something. And so they ended up like trying to force foreclosure on us. Like we would send them our mortgage check and they would send it back to us and say that they would refuse payment. And like later on down the road, there was like a whole class action lawsuit against our mortgage company. And, we were the good Kool-Aid drinking Christians. We were like, Christians don't sue people. And so we weren't a part of that. But it was a whole, hundreds of thousands of people lost their house because this mortgage company did shady crap. Right. And so, and it's in 2009. So it's like in the prime of like the housing market crap and all of that. Like our house was posted in the newspaper for public auction. Like we had to get a lawyer, we had to fight it. It was a whole thing. So we ended up saving our house, but in the process of that, that Christmas, we were going to have our power turned off, and I was embarrassed. And this coupled with now my husband I'm clearly not doing my job correctly. I need to submit to my husband all of these things. We've already established my husband has ADHD. And so my depression coupled with
the organized gifted person in depression and the person with ADHD.
Like it's like we're not functioning adults. We're just not at this time.
Right. Well, because this is so like counter character of who you are.
Yes.
Like being in this says like help. I need help. Like this is not me, and I'm obviously in this. Like for a church to at one point tell you that you're like spiritually gifted in organization, and then for this story to be the reality you were living in at the time, that's not like that's a desperate cry for help. Like, and
I didn't want to tell anyone.
Yeah.
Like I did not want to tell anyone. And so in passing, I had asked Charlotte for prayer over our finances. So then she pulled me aside individually and asked me what was going on. And I told her. And so I had to write an email pretty much explaining my problem and asking for help. And then I had to give her names of people in the church to ask for help. So I'm embarrassed. I'm depressed. I don't want anyone to know, but the church wants to help me pay my bill, but the church isn't going to do it. I have to ask church people, and then I have to come up with a list. And so do you know how hard that is? Because there's people that you know are also struggling financially that would help me in a heartbeat, but also I'm not going to ask them for help.
Right.
Like they're struggling just as much as we are.
Right.
So I'm not going to ask them for help. So then you feel just like an ass because you're like, I'm going through and I'm like, who knows me? And then also, who am I not going to feel completely humiliated that's going to know what's going on with me?
Right. And then
but also has enough money to be able to help me.
Right.
And so that was really, really hard. That was like probably one of the hardest things I had to do.
Yeah.
But then I turned right around, and whenever people would be in that situation, I became the person at the church that Charlotte and Tom would say, well, sit down with Amanda. She'll help you write this email, and she'll help you go through the list of church members and decide who you're going to send. So this is how we are going to move forward with if you need help with a bill, if you get behind on a bill, this is how we're going to move forward. And I became that person because apparently I don't know, I did a good job of it, or they recognized that I was so like entrenched in the indoctrination that like I I was willing to set my own self aside to follow the system. I don't know why I became that person.
It's interesting to me sitting here because I don't think I've come to the church yet at this point. I don't think we're to the point where I've attended yet. And to see how I know things were handled years later, and then to hear the origin of that and be like, we're not sitting down and organizing a church structure, even as a business, like that's one of my biggest thing, I hate to say a church is a business, but like, even if you were organizing, not even a church, but a business, right? Anything, like that there would be an organizational structure and a process and a way that we do things.
Mm-hmm.
And to be like, to come into an established church organization thinking that they have policies and procedures in place and set up, like, when this happens, this is how we deal with it. But now to realize that these are like on a whim, like, this worked great for you, let's make this our policy. Like, and it's not even like intentional, it's toxic. There's something so very wrong with that, like, fundamentally.
Yeah. Well, and keep in mind, like, Justin's parents had stopped attending the church at this point. They had a falling out with some people in the church, so they stopped attending the church. But I mean, we still, like, we see them on a regular basis and things like that. I mean, we still have relationships with them, that we live in the same town. I'm very, very close with my family, and Justin and I are both just like so embarrassed to tell our family and ask our families for help. And we're being ingrained and it's being drilled into us that, like, your church is your family. This is your family. We're here to help each other. We're here to love each other. And so it's so crazy as I'm saying this out loud, like, thinking, like, later on when Brandy would come and Brandy would be like, what the hell is going on? Like, why is this such a crap show? And I would be like, oh no, like, we just have to get back to the good old days. Like, this is the good old days. Like, I was depressed.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying my bills, and have more faith, and don't be fat, and have more faith, and just pray and go to Bible study and do more Master Life and just serve and just tithe.
And none of these things are actually going in and working through the process and step by stepping. Like, this is what you, like, they're not helpful. Like, I don't even know, they're not helpful.
But
this
in my
real practical
in
help.
my mind, I'm telling people these were the good old days.
Yeah.
Like, this
is crazy.
Crazy
to me.
We just have to get back to the good times.
Because I've heard you say, like,
I'm sure I've said it to you.
You have. Later on, when we're in these conversations, you're like, we just get back to the good old days. Like, I remember having those conversations with you.
Yeah. So, after all this, I get pregnant again. So I have 2 kids in a year and a half. And so I'm in denial that I'm pregnant again.
We've now officially returned to Egypt.
Yeah.
Amanda's in denial.
Yes. Like, to the point where I convinced myself for the entire first trimester that I just had the flu. Yeah. Every morning.
Like, this is not happening.
This is not happening. I'm still serving in youth. The main guy who was working with me, we take the youth. We were going to Dare to Share, and we were going overnight, and we had made some parameters for some kids about, like, acceptable behavior and things like that, because we were staying overnight in a hotel and things like that. And Tom really had a hard time with that, because when Tom was young, Tom got told he could not be in Boy Scouts because, I don't know, his attitude, he was a naughty kid. I don't know, but it stuck with him his whole life. So here we are, a grown-ass man, years later, and we still are holding that trauma response. So when someone says someone isn't allowed to do something, and we had some kids that they had some like behavior problems just in school and at home, and their parents were very vocal about it and stuff. And so we had actually invited, the whole situation was we invited the parents to either come as chaperones or the parents drive the kids, but we did not feel comfortable, given these specific behavioral issues, to to have the kids come and stay overnight without their parents and have it be on us as the chaperones. And Tom lost his mind. That was unacceptable. We love everyone equally. And so he sat down in a room with us and screamed at us about how we are to love, but he screamed at us. And so this guy and him get into a big, huge argument. And again, Tom and the youth leader are in an argument, yelling at each other. This time it's not in an office. It's in Tom's office behind the closed door. It's like out in the middle of the church office for everyone to see. And we lose another youth leader to a disagreement. So I am now the adult in charge of youth group. And there's these two, I say kids because they were youth kids and then they ended up getting married. But I mean, they're adults, but they're very, very young adults. They were in youth when I first started being a youth leader, and they want to get involved with youth. And honestly, as young as they were, like, they freaking killed it as youth leaders. Like, he was so relatable, and he was like the crazy one, like, let's play dodgeball. Like, we played dodgeball. He invented lights out dodgeball where we turn lights off and we play dodgeball. And after we broke a girl's nose, we decided everyone had to at least wear glow sticks. Yeah. So you didn't run into each other, because the thought of like giving teenagers dodgeball in the dark and just like, we're just going to pelt each other. Yeah. And if you get hit, then find a wall and sit down. Like, it was
good in theory.
Yes, but like the kids loved him. His wife was so wise, and like, she was the kind of person that, like, she wouldn't talk a whole lot, but when she did, it carried so much weight. And I loved serving in youth with them. I did. Like, we had a ball together, and
no pun intended.
They would make fun of me because I was like, I think I broke my hip. Like, still to this day, my hip hurts because we were playing basketball in our socks.
On a slippery gym floor.
And me and the gal ran into each other, and we slipped and fell. And we were laughing so hard. Like, people thought we were really like legit hurt, but we were laughing too hard to get up. Like, I mean, we had so much fun together, but still to this day, my hip hurts. So I think I did some, like, when it gets cold, I'm like, oh, my hip, my old
football injury,
my old basketball injury from my youth days. So
it's gonna rain. My hip hurts.
But I mean, we did a lot. Like, we had youth, like, music nights. We had we invited people to come in for concerts. We did all of these things. We had study nights to help kids study. We redid the purity study, and he actually wrote a male version, and so we revamped it minus the chlamydia. We revamped the purity study, and we did that with the kids. I mean, we painted murals, like, we decorated the youth room because we've built a building at this point, which I'm gonna, to save this story, like, I'll go into all of that, like, when we get into like our episode about what it was like actually building that building. But like, we decorated the youth room, and like, he let kids like spray paint a mural. And I mean, like, this kid who was getting in trouble for graffitiing things, he's like, hey, like, you're talented. Like, let me teach you how to use your talent for something that's actually like not illegal. And so he spray painted this big, huge mural for the youth room. And this kid actually, like, he's a freelance artist now. Like, he gets paid. Yeah. I mean, he's not a kid anymore. He's
an adult.
He's an adult.
Doing his art thing.
Yeah, he's doing his art thing. And and I mean, we had a great time. We were having such a good time that we had a lot of kids that were younger than youth age wanting to come to youth. And so we started up, my husband kind of ran the boy side with the guy youth leader. And he went through an actual like organization called Royal Ambassador. So basically it's like the Christian version of Boy Scouts. But again, they were not allowed to earn badges. because Tom had a very bad experience. He never earned a badge. He felt left out because he never earned a badge in Boy Scouts or whatever it was that he was involved in as a kid. And so they weren't allowed to earn badges, but they could still do all the things, right?
Yeah.
I looked for a girl equivalent to that, and all I could find was like this really stupid thing, traditional, fundamental Baptist, like the girls earn badges for things like cooking and doing laundry and learning to iron and all of these stupid things, right? And I'm like, this is stupid. We're not doing this. So I invented my own thing, and we called it 3Gs, so Girls Growing God's Way. And I mean, we still did fun things. We did, like, the older ladies, I had them all bring in their sewing machines, and the girls made pillowcases. But like, we went on hikes. We had a lady, she did cake decorating in the church. And so she came and did cake decorating for the 3G girls. I think your girl, like,
my girls were involved. By this time we were at the church and my girls were involved in 3Gs.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we had fun, but then we did other things. Like, we had things where we would read Bible verses, and I wanted them to talk about how it made them feel or things like that. And I was trying to, like, teach them, like, you can read scripture and you can understand it on your own. And,
I felt like to me as a parent, it was very well-rounded. Like, you had like the skills part, the spiritual part, and then you also had like the self-care and self-esteem part.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was a really well-rounded program.
Yeah.
And I know my kids, like my daughters, loved it.
Yeah. And I tried really hard to, like, help the girls, like, be confident in who they were and how God made them. And so, like, we even had things like, what sounds fun to you? Like, I don't want to tell you what we're going to learn. Like, so like the whole sewing thing was actually one of the girls came up with that. And so it was very much like, well, what do you want to learn to do? Like, you want to sew? How can I work like a Bible lesson into this? So we were doing that. And then, Justin and I decide we are going to facilitate a love and respect class. So in our marriage episode, we talk about love and respect. So we are facilitating this class, which basically means, like, everyone's reading the book. Every couple's reading the book and doing the homework on their own. And then we come together once a week and basically we have discussions. So these discussions, Justin and I are just reading the questions out of the book. And, like, if there's an awkward silence, we're trying to fill that. Like, that's what facilitating means. And so we are in the middle of this. I'm trying my best to pull myself out of this depression. I am trying so hard. So I'm pouring myself into a whole bunch of different things to fill that void. There's clearly something wrong with my faith. I've tried praying on my own. I've tried doing this at home. I can't do this at home. Now I see it for what it was. I was a depressed housewife who was sick of looking at her house, who felt trapped by having to be at home with tiny kids all day long. And I was losing my mind. Yeah. Losing my mind. And so I am getting more and more involved, to the point where I throw it out there. I would like to be a speaker at the next women's retreat. Is what I would like to do.
Which is big and bold of you. Like,
yes.
When I got there, you didn't ask to speak at women's retreat. You got asked.
Yes. And so I felt like I was being called to speak at the next retreat. So I'm helping on Thursday nights with children's ministry. And Thursday nights are big at this point because this is one of the times where the entire church is having to go through, I think we're all going through Master Life together. So everybody in the church is expected to come on a Thursday night and be in a Master Life group. And so because I didn't want to take Master Life again for like
the 27th time.
Yeah. I think it was like, it would have been like the third or fourth time at that point. I didn't want to do it again. So I volunteered to help with children's ministry. So I'm helping with children's ministry. We have a great night. Like there's kids, they're asking questions. One kid wants a Bible. One kid prays for salvation. Like, I mean, it was just a fantastic night, right? I go home that Thursday night and my husband had gone out for drinks with some people he used to work with. And he was just like grouchy when he came home and distant. And I was like, okay, whatever. That Friday, we took the kids out. Wreck-It Ralph had just come out. So we took the kids out to go see Wreck-It Ralph at the movie theater Friday night. And he was so grumpy. Like even on the way home, I remember like the kids had fallen asleep in the car. And I remember being like, if you didn't want to come, you shouldn't have just come. Like you're kind of being a party pooper for everyone, you know? Saturday, he just doesn't say a whole lot, keeps his distance. Sunday, we sit in church. And Tom loves his analogies. Tom would always have like one thing that he kept circling back around to. And that day was cheating on your wife. Someone is cheating on their wife. And so now we're going to have an episode in the coming weeks about pulpit shaming. And so you will see exactly what I mean. But everyone knew if Tom said something more than once as an example, he was talking about someone.
Yeah.
And so when every example he used for every point in his sermon was about someone being unfaithful, we started like, oh, someone's cheating on their wife. Wonder who that is. Then we have assault training after church. So we stay for SALT training. And again, Tom's talking about being unfaithful to your spouse. And in one of the things he said, he was talking about how these people, this couple was fighting and they came in and they got counsel from him. And he told that he's like, they wanted me to tell them, you're right, you're wrong. And I just told them, you need to stop trying to be right and stop trying to be heard and start telling your spouse what God wants them to hear. Which, okay, like now knowing Tom and like seeing for it for what it is, he got tired of a husband and wife sitting in his office seeking counsel. And he just wanted them to like stop fighting in front of him. And so he wanted to give them something that would get them to shut up and leave his office but he was making it this big spiritual thing. And so that was his deal. Sunday night, I go up. My sister is like, she was having like a Pampered Chef type party. So I went up to her house. It was about an hour away. And I took Jolene with me. And then Justin stayed home with the boys. So I took our daughter and she's, I don't know, like 1.5, 2 at this point. And we are sitting, we go out to dinner, me, my mom, my sister, and my daughter. And at dinner, we're sitting at the restaurant and Jolene is kind of like sitting to the side in her chair. And she has her arm through like the back slat of the chair. And she has her foot up on the table and she's pushing on it and she's tipping in her chair. And I no more than get done saying, stop doing that. You're going to tip over. And her whole chair tips all the way over. And so her arm is stuck through that back slat. She lands right on her elbow. She's crying, but she's like easily consolable. And she's like, oh, that hurt. But like she can move it and not cry. So I was like, it's okay. But we get home and it's a little like swollen. So I'm kind of concerned. So I put her in bed with us. So with her asleep in between the two of us, my husband looks at me and he's just like, I have to tell you something. So a little bit of a backstory. He had been working at this place and the secretary at this place very clearly had a crush on him. And I even was like, I don't like the way she talks to you. I don't like the way she looks at you. And he's like, oh no, I think of her as one of the guys. He had switched jobs, but he would still get together with the guys from that old job and have drinks like every so often, like every few months, right? After work. And so I guess he had called. We found out after the fact, talking to people, he called the office. So she's the secretary. Of course she answered. She said, yeah, I'll let the guys know. She did not tell the guys. So when my husband showed up at the restaurant that Thursday night to have drinks, the guys did not show up. It was just her. One thing led to another, and a one-night affair happened. And so this, like, the whole weekend, the whole reason my husband was grouchy and everything, like, he was feeling guilty. A side effect of spiritual abuse and high control organizations is you jump to worst case scenarios.
Right.
Everything you are mentally preparing yourself for every worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So when he said, I have to tell you something, in my mind, I'm like, well, worst case scenario, you slept with her.
Right.
So nothing
could be as bad as that.
Could be as bad as that. And then it was that.
And it was that. And you're like,
and the fact that our daughter was in the bed with us is honestly like what kept me calm.
Today, so
yep, because
he's alive today.
I didn't want to wake her up.
Yeah.
And so I went in the bathroom. I got sick. I sat in there like with the door locked, cried, all of that. So like I wanted more than anything just to like throw all of his crap out on the lawn and be like, get out, leave me alone.
Which I just want you to know is highly illegal.
We'll get to that story.
I almost went to jail for that. Apparently you can't do that. In the state of Colorado.
So like I'm mad, but then I'm like, I have to give it all to God, and I have to, I'm struggling, and I just hear Tom's voice say, don't try to be right. Don't try to be heard. Just tell your spouse what God wants them to hear. And so I walk out and I'm like, well, we have to figure out how we're moving forward. So you're going to have to you have to go to Tom. You have to step down from what you're doing at church because this is the proper channels to take. I'm going to have to call Charlotte, all of these things.
We went into, I don't know what that's called, like PR mode or whatever.
Yes.
Like,
no, exactly. I was in cleanup mode.
Yeah.
We're going to,
right.
Yep.
Had a problem. We've processed it. We say we've processed it.
Yes.
Which was like 10 minutes of getting over the shock. And then now we go into cleanup mode. Yeah.
He goes in. Well, so we have to wait a day because my daughter ends up breaking her elbow. We had to take her to the emergency room. She had to get casted, like that whole thing. So the whole next morning, that is what we are doing, right? So it wasn't until the following day, like that Tuesday, that he goes into Tom's office, admits what he did. And Tom's like, well, you can't live in shame. You have to forgive yourself. So we're going to move forward.
Yeah. Forgive yourself. Move on. Let's go.
Yep.
Right back at it.
Okay.
What's done is done. We're moving on.
Yep. Charlotte, while he is with Tom, Charlotte comes to my house and brings chocolate and wants to sit down and talk with me and everything. And she's very gentle. She lets me tell my side of the story and everything. And then she asks me, how often had I been having sex with my husband? And could that have possibly been
how is this your fault?
A reason.
What did you do?
And
did you frown? Were you making frowny faces at your husband so that he doesn't like you?
Under no circumstances were we to talk about this. We, keep in mind, are facilitating a marriage class.
Yeah.
And so I was like, we can't facilitate this class. So this woman comes in to facilitate the class for us. This woman is not a fan of me. She actually kept her daughter from youth group because she overheard a conversation. I had been talking privately with a youth girl who had gone through a purity study. And again, I don't want anyone to hear this and think that I am romanticizing or perpetuating purity culture whatsoever. Like, I am ashamed that I participated and spewed that crap. I'm ashamed of that. And that is one of my biggest regrets, is that I actively was that person in girls' lives. And I hate that I did that. But this girl had gone through the purity study, and she was in high school. She had been sleeping with her boyfriend, and she felt like she didn't want to sleep with him anymore. She wanted to do it God's way, all of this stuff. And she was scared that if she told him that, he would break up with her. So me and this girl were having a private conversation, and this woman was eavesdropping on our conversation. So she refused to let her daughter join youth group because all Amanda talks about is sex. And, she was not a fan of me. She ended up coming in and taking over 3Gs through all of this also, because Amanda cannot be an effective leader. So I was in the process of stepping out of youth group anyway. At this point, I had decided I was going to step out of youth and into women's ministry, because I spoke at one women's retreat, and I decided that was my calling in life. And so I was in the process of stepping out of youth group and moving into women's ministry full time. So I had already started that transition. But so Amanda, she's not going to be leading youth, so that's fine. But we can't facilitate a Bible study. We can't lead 3Gs because this has gone on in her life. Meanwhile, my husband he took himself out of leading things. He himself stepped down. Tom would have let him continue to do whatever.
Yeah, you're fine. Get over it. You've confessed you're wrong. We're moving on. Can't do anything about the past. Let's keep going. Yeah.
Yes, my husband.
He was not told or forced or coerced into feeling shame or bad or stepping down.
Yes. Yeah. But I am being removed from things.
Yeah.
Because
it's your fault. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be a jerk. But
no, but that was, and that's how I felt.
It is. And I guess, everybody's like, oh, you're such a jerk. It's not her fault.
No.
But this is the narrative that you were told at Come As You Are. There was never any accountability for any man ever at that church. If a man was, even in sermons, if a man was doing something wrong, or if it was, if the example was a man, like the man cheating on his wife, in that, like, the next phrase was, women, this is what you need to do. Yeah. Like, it was always placed on the woman. It's your fault. And even by Charlotte's coming and saying, well, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing as a wife? I make jokes about the frowny face, but that was the narrative. Yeah. You are not the only woman who was told this. I'm not the only woman who was told this. There's dozens of women. Yeah. If you sit down and have a conversation and you start to learn what their husbands were doing, you will hear the same story, that they were responsible for their husband's behavior. And that's a bunch of crap. And so there's a lot of times where, like, in this process of us timelining this and going through this, you can get very like, why did I do that? What was wrong with me? But like, this was one of those things that, like, deep down in my gut, I knew this wasn't my fault. Right. Deep down in my gut, I wasn't the one who was there and made those decisions. Right. No, like, but you've been taught from the moment you walked in the door, the way you were taught to be a Christian woman led up to this moment. Everything led up to this moment. You've had Bible studies. You've had group teachings. You've had sermons. You've had everything conditioning you and programming you for this moment. Yeah. That when this happened, the next narrative that you would be told, and the story as it goes on, you were being conditioned from the moment you walked in the door to this point, that this is how it is. Yes. And there were things going on in my husband's personal life that led to that as well. But I mean, that's his story to tell. That's not this podcast. Right. But I knew deep down it was not my fault. So my actions towards my husband were not what Charlotte wanted me to do. And I knew enough to know I'm not going to say anything. We're going to act like, in front of Charlotte, in front of Tom at church, I'm going to act like I am doing all the things that Charlotte is telling me to do. But deep down, I'm not doing those things. And behind closed doors, I'm not doing those things because I'm pissed. Well, yeah. Yeah, because the things that they're telling you to do, they're like, suck it up and move on.
Yeah.
And
And
you
God
have
keeps no record of wrongs. And
Right.
so if you're going to forgive him, you need to forget that it ever happened and not keep a record of a wrong.
Right. But that's not how life works. It's not how mental health works. It's not how your emotional stability works. That's not how you have to process emotions. You have to go through the process. You have to be sad. You have to grieve. You have to experience the negative emotions in order for them to go away. If you just bottle them up, they're going to come back out later somewhere else.
Yeah.
And not in a good, healthy way.
No. And so I am playing the part, but deep down I'm pissed.
Right.
And so we have to go to this Bible study, this love and respect study. This woman who already does not like me has taken over 3Gs and is like, now she's the one who's placed over me, who her and her husband are going to come in and facilitate this. Justin and I are still expected to finish the study.
Yeah. You have to still attend it.
Yep. We're not allowed to say what happened. I'm pissed. I want to walk in and be like, this is what my husband did.
Yeah.
And I'm pissed off, and can we talk about it?
Yeah.
And I can't do that.
Right.
So I have to go and I have to sit there. For the very first week, something had happened at work and Justin got called in, like it was a work emergency, and he couldn't come. And I was told by Charlotte, under no circumstances could we just not show up.
Right.
So I had to go by myself and sit there. Why this woman was like, there were some issues, but it's okay. And, we're just going to move on. And we're going to be the facilitators now. And there will be no questions.
Right.
Like, and all these people in the study are looking at us
They're all like,
what the hell happened?
And then your husband's not there. It's just you. So now they're left to their own imagination.
Yes.
And we have to be vague. And we can't actually give details. I'm not going to really talk about this thing. We're just going to sweep it under the rug and move on.
Yep. We're not allowed to talk about it. So I've stepped out of youth. This woman has now decided that the young couple that I was serving in youth with, that I handed them everything, she's decided that they are now not adequate leaders.
Yeah.
So she steps in. So this woman was given all of this power, and at the time we were like, the only reason we can think of is they're huge donors. Like they are huge financial donors of the church. But all of this went down in like November of 2011. In February of 2012, her husband was made another pastor. So keep in mind, when we brought on Pastor O'Reliable, there was talk of it. It was, people had to affirm it, all of these things. I was volunteering in the office when all of like this new guy went down. Like I was actively a part of the church. I found out that we were going to license him. There was no like, we're going to vote. Like,
no, we're just bringing him on as a pastor. Yeah.
We're bringing him on as a pastor. We're going to license him. It showed up in the bulletin, like, in 2 weeks, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I questioned it. And it was like, yeah, this is what we're going to do. And I was like, oh, like, so like we're voting. And Tom was like, no, we're not voting. And I was like, well, like, that's what we did with pastoral. We're like, no.
Yeah. And he told you, we never did that with the other guy. You're like, no, I was there. We did. And gaslighting.
Yeah.
He said, no, we never did that.
And so then when I questioned it, it was kind of like, well, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. And that's what we did with Pastoral Reliable. And I was like, okay, so like maybe he thought, I kind of like dismissed it. Like maybe he thought I was talking about two different things. Like we have to vote first. And then on a different day, we're going to license him. Like, okay, I see, maybe I misspoke. Like, again, taking it on myself. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, that's fine. I can't be there.
Right.
I had made plans when, I saw it in the bulletin. I'm sorry, I already have plans. Tom was so mad at me. Not because I wasn't going to be there because of like me as a person, but because the church needed pictures.
That's so crazy.
Who's going to take pictures of that?
So the church photographer. So
yeah. And I was the one taking all the pictures of all the church things at that point. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll find someone. I will find someone to come and take the pictures.
Yeah.
That's fine. So I had to find someone. Tom was super mad. But then I found out after the fact, like, it wasn't voted. Like, he let men get up and talk about how they felt this guy was qualified to be a pastor. And again, keep in mind, none of these people have gone to seminary.
Right.
None of these people have any formal training of anything. They are, like we talked about in our Steps and Studies episode, like, people are calling out, they see this in these men.
Yeah.
And so it was only men who got up to talk. So how do you see that this guy is a pastor? How is God living that out in his life? Because if God's going to make him a pastor, he's already doing pastor things.
Yeah.
Even without the title.
So how has he been a pastor in your life?
Yes. Yeah. And so these men say it, and then all the men who are there gather around him and pray, and he signs a piece of paper, and he's licensed.
Yeah.
He's like, there was no vote.
No, I was there. There was no
there was nothing. So this woman is, now we know, like,
she's
okay,
assuming her role as a pastor's
yes,
wife.
as a pastor's wife.
So
yep.
she was being, because it's like, it is almost like, now that you say it and I think about it, like, from the time I got there and knowing these people to the point where we're at, where he becomes a pastor, like, from my vantage point, like, it makes total sense. Like, she was going to be a pastor's wife. So she started stepping into all these roles. I mean, and she was like, from participate, like, she was attending and participating, but then all of a sudden there became this, like, leadership and authority that just came out of the blue.
Yep. And so she takes over 3Gs.
Because I had no idea what was going on behind the scenes, but I was there for this time and, like, just knew she was taking over all this stuff. Yeah.
She turns it into, there is like a, what is it called? American Heritage Girls.
Yes.
Is what she ended up doing. Again, you can't earn badges or anything because Tom has an issue with that.
Yeah, but it was geared around how to grow up and be the Christian, godly wife.
How do you do laundry? How do you,
so.
Yep, all of those things.
So it's Girl Scouts for how to be a wife and a mommy.
Yep. So that I am now struggling.
Yeah.
And so I pour everything I have into women's ministry.
Yeah.
I'm pouring it all in. I've spoken at one women's retreat, and now I'm like, yep, I'm full-time women's ministry. So I am heading into speaking at my second retreat ever. And I feel like I want to talk about what happened between me and my husband. Yeah. He is going to speak at men's retreat just a few months later. We both agree we need to talk about this. People need to know that this can happen in Christian marriages, and we need to talk about it. And we need to talk about how it's a slippery slope, and you need to guard your marriage, and all of these things. We felt very passionately that we needed to talk about it. And Charlotte told me under no circumstances was I to talk about it in my talk.
In fact, she gave you a phrase you were allowed to say, right?
I was allowed to say, there was some issues in my marriage, but through God's grace and prayer, Justin and I were able to reconcile, and God fixed it, basically.
Right.
I was not to talk about the affair. I was not to talk about any of that. I definitely couldn't talk about the fact that I was pissed off. I could not talk about the fact that, like, I low-key, for a while, considered divorce. Like, could not talk about it at all. And I got up there and I just felt like this is so wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I can't just whitewash this away.
Right.
And, like, this is so wrong. And before we went up to retreat, I had to actually write down my talk and I had to give it to Charlotte.
Yeah.
And no one had ever had to do that before. Ever.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Everyone who came after me.
All the time.
Everyone who came after me because of the stunt that I pulled.
Yeah.
I had to write down my talk because she wanted to make sure I wasn't going to talk about it. So she gave me the wording. She gave me the phrasing of what I was allowed to say.
How you were allowed to present this information.
And so when I got up there and I stood in front of those women, I basically said, screw it. And I'm going to just say it.
Right.
And so I did. I just said it.
And you know what I think is so funny about that? My takeaway from that retreat. So, like, I was newly married.
Mm-hmm.
So I really don't even know what you talked about, right? Like, I mean, there was no, like, Charlotte was so worried about what you were going to say.
Yeah.
But sitting in the audience, like, no clue what you talked about. But I do know this. You said hot mess in your talk.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I'm like, that's when I learned the term. Like, it was a brand new term. And I was like, I like that. It's a hot mess. I started calling everything a hot mess. But, like, totally oblivious to the rest of your talk. No clue. And she's so worried. And so overly consumed with what you share for whatever reason, I can't even understand why, like, so protect, like, what was the big deal? Like,
yeah.
But we've talked about that before and with our personalities anyway, where we're always like, what's the big deal? Like, this is real life. We need to talk about it. So for whatever.
Yeah. So she didn't want me to say it. I said it. She got pissed. Yeah. She got up and she left the room.
Yeah.
And I got a talking to. I got pulled into her room during one of the breaks, and I got reprimanded for being defiant, and you need to honor the people who are in authority over you. And she couldn't believe that I was so defiant. Yeah. And I kind of was like, well, whatever God told me to say, that's what I said.
Yeah. Aren't you teaching me that? That's what I'm supposed to do?
Like,
yeah, you are.
And there was a lot of women who came up to me that were like, thank you for sharing that. And, like, I got a lot of positive reactions. We did get some negative ones. Like, when we went to church the following Sunday, there were some women who came up and said some pretty nasty things to my husband.
Right, even
after I had said, like,
hey, look, he knows I'm saying this. And...
Yeah, they're just, grouchy old women needing to say something. We had not told our family. We had not told anyone what had happened. And so I went to my mother-in-law's friend and I said, please do not say anything to her because we want to be able to talk to her personally. And my husband's just not ready to do that yet. And so I'm just asking you to please not say anything. I found out years later that she had actually called her before we even got down the mountain.
Yeah.
As soon as we had cell service, she was on the phone calling my mother-in-law to tattle. And so again, like, telling this whole story and you think, like, these were your best years there?
Right.
Like, these were the highlights of your life?
I think we hit the point where the best years start to crumble. Like, the pendulum has swung.
Yeah, but I want everyone to really, like, as we move forward, the stories we tell from this point forward, it is so important to view this all under the lens that we had been so indoctrinated. We had drank so much Kool-Aid that this entire episode of the stories I just told you, I viewed those as the good years.
Yeah.
Depression, oppression, infidelity, stress, all of these things. These were my good years.
Yeah, all in an attempt to be a part of this organization.
Yep.
And be on the right side of it and the good side of it, and to take your place and serve out your purpose and all that wonderful stuff.
Yep. These were my good years.
Good years.
Burning Butterflies is a listener-supported podcast. Today's episode was brought to you by our amazing supporters on Patreon.
Follow the link in our show notes to learn how you can become a Patreon supporter too. Supporters get exclusive access to bonus content each month, including outtakes, cut content, and supporter-only episodes. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating on your listening platform.
Burning Butterflies is a production of Asha Media. Thank you for listening.